lymphatics is really like the mirror to the circulatory system. So our blood brings nutrients to every cell in our body, and the lymphatic system takes the waste products away so that those cells aren't like bathing in toxic waste. And the problem is if that doesn't move, if that lymph doesn't take it away, our cells break down faster. We end up with drainage and detox issues. We could have, if we don't already have methylation issues, we could end up with like people, the big term right now is, I have MTHFR, should I be doing this? Well, everybody should really be doing it. And so because our lymphatic system doesn't have a pump, we have to move it.
If you have ever wanted to know more about lymph drainage, specifically how to enhance and drain your lymph system at home on your own for free, using things like dry brushing, gua sha, and more, this is going to be one of the best episodes you've ever seen. In this episode, I get to interview Dr. Caitlin. She is an incredible lymph expert, and you're going to walk away with so many great tools that you can implement today to impact yours and your family's health. Enjoy. Welcome, Dr. Caitlin. We are going to have an incredibly in-depth conversation on all things lymph and detox.
Yeah, I'm excited. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Amazing. So I want to zoom out a little bit and give people a little bit of my introduction with you, our relationship. Caitlin and I met about 5 years ago when Jason and I joined Health Centers of the Future, Dr. Pompa's coaching program. And I remember showing up at this dinner with you and Niles and Dr. Sonia Jensen and her husband, Nick, and Dr. Mindy Peltz and Sequoia, and just, sitting at this table and looking around and realizing what an incredible community that we were joining. And what I found with our relationships with one another is, we are all people that want to continuously get out of our comfort zone. We're all addicted to growth. I think we all have personal growth and professional growth as one of probably our top core values, along with health and freedom for most of us. And it's been so interesting to watch you, Caitlin, because I'm seeing you have found your niche. I've watched you talk about detoxification and dental health, and you went down that path and learned so much. And it was so amazing to watch you shine there. And I'm so curious how that's gotten you into this lymph lane, because this is truly, I am seeing you shine, and this is exactly where you're supposed to be. And I'm so excited to pick your brain about this conversation.
It's super funny because it really does come full circle. So my training, much like you, is chiropractic. And in school, I studied to become a pediatric and pregnancy chiropractor. So by the time I graduated, I was fully certified. And I was actually the only certified pediatric and pregnancy chiropractor in Denver when we opened up our first office in 2010. And I was doing a ton of like lymphatic and fascial and cranial sacral work, because majority of my practice was pregnant women and kids. And I just saw like how amazing the benefits were, and how kids would like snap out of colds and families wouldn't get sick, and like all these amazing things, not to mention some like pretty crazy stuff that I'd have like kids come in because the parents or grandparents brought them in and the doctors told them that they would never hit any milestones or would never do certain things. And by implementing like, and that wasn't just lymph, but like lymph and fascial stuff and all of these things, these kids were not only meeting milestones, but they were surpassing them. And then health challenges got, especially with my husband and a little bit with me, took us down a functional route. So 2 years after we started our structural practice, we got into functional, and it was mostly for our own health benefit. And what ended up morphing was we ended up going fully functional. So I'm a certified functional medicine practitioner. I've been certified for almost a decade now, working one-on-one with clients. And it's so funny because I got away from the basics and I was focusing on important things too, like nutrition and liver and gut and like labs, and really looking at, okay, where is the problem coming from? But I stopped looking at things like fascia and lymph and that's role in it. And it wasn't until I did cavitation surgery and really dove into the dental world, because I had some really bad cavitations. And I did what I thought everything was right. I went to the right dentist. I did all the prep. And a couple months later, I ended up breaking out like massively, especially like on my sternum, under my breast. And it started moving up towards my collarbones. And it looked like a fungal like growth. And I was like, what?
I remember seeing that on you.
Yeah. And remember, I was wearing shirts like up to here because I was
Mhm.
like, oh my gosh, this is terrible. Like, this looks like I have some kind of contagious disease. And it turns out that it was my lymph because I didn't do anything about my lymph. And there's so much lymph in our jaw. And I had my tonsils out when I was young. So I really do believe that I've had chronic lymph issues from a super, super young age. And so I started doing some more stuff on me with my lymph back in like 2018, 2019, started to get better. And then last year, I started seeing people teaching lymph and drainage on Instagram, and they were doing it wrong. And that's really what got me starting to teach more on lymph was everybody was teaching it wrong. And if you're doing it wrong, you're really not going to see the benefits. And then ultimately, it's just like, well, that doesn't work. So, long story short, it really did bring me back to where I started about 15 years ago with the whole lymphatics and fascial and like cranial sacral and making sure everything's moving to incorporating lymphatic drainage into all of the drainage, like liver, gut, kidneys, and then as a secondary, lungs and skin. So it's funny how that happens full circle.
Yeah, and a lot of those organs mentioned, I don't think a lot of people think of, when we think of the lymph, and I know we're going to dive into that. I want to just touch on a couple things you said before we get into this conversation because there's so much gold in that. And one as a pediatric practitioner as well, like you said, it wasn't necessarily like just the lymph that was helping them hit these milestones, but when people tell someone you're never going to do something, you're never going to hit these milestones in the instances that you were mentioning, like never say never, because our bodies are designed to thrive. And what you helped them do is get rid of that interference, right? You got rid of the chemical interference, you were adjusting them, you were helping get their flow, get them back to them. And
Mm-hmm.
that's, I feel like, what we're all doing here. We're all helping people get rid of that interference, whether it's physical, chemical, emotional. Once you drop that stuff and you're aligned, like everything just happens the way it's supposed to.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And everyone's different, where theirs is maybe more chemical and some others might be more physical. And so it's
Mhm.
going to look a little different for everybody. But I agree with you completely.
And then the other kind of cool part, and it's a little bit vulnerable, I hope this is okay to touch on this.
Hmm.
I was with you at a mastermind in Utah
Hmm.
with you and Niles. And uh, again, just I'm so proud of you. I feel like you are exactly where you should be. This is your passion, and you're so good at teaching this to people. And we went through an exercise where it was like identifying what's getting in the way of us shining, of us doing what we're here to do. And you really hit it. And without going into too much detail, it was really hard for you to say what you said in front of everybody. And I fell in love even deeper with you there. And after that, it's like, not that this matters, but we all literally watched you go viral. Like things like that happen. It's like when we are open to being vulnerable and being real, I just think that's when we really let down our guard and things happen easily for us the way that they're intended to. And I'm so proud to sit here on the sidelines and watch you because you're helping so many people. And that's where it's at.
Honestly, never in a million years would I think that I'd be talking on lymphatics or specifically drainage systems. But when I think about it and I take a few steps back, every single person that I've ever worked with when it comes to a functional standpoint, whether it's a chronic condition like headaches, fatigue, problems sleeping, hormone imbalances, or diagnosed diseases like diabetes, Hashimoto's, hypothyroidism, like MS, Crohn's, colitis, like the list goes on, they all boil down to more or less multiple issues with their drainage system. And I'm not saying that's the only thing that has to be addressed, but the way that I see it, and this is just me, other people may see it differently, is our drainage systems are foundation. So much like our house. So if our house shifts and the foundation shifts, we're going to have cracks in the ceiling. And we can patch the cracks. Like I can give somebody supplements or medications to lower their blood sugar. I can give somebody supplements or medications to increase their thyroid or to improve or reduce bloating or whatever it may be. But those cracks are always going to be there under the surface. And without addressing that foundation, you're always going to be chasing those cracks. And so initially, when I started teaching on lymph, it was more of a, I'm just pissed off because this is being taught wrong. And now I'm like, well, this ties into so much more. And if people started to do this at home, they wouldn't need to see me one on one as much. And that's really the whole goal is I don't want people to have to like spend years and tons of money fixing a problem that could have been prevented if they only knew how to prevent it in the first place. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's funny and I still love it because it allows me to like dig into research and all that. Still like I have a crazy lymphatic textbook behind me written by a German guy that's no longer in print, but it's amazing. And sometimes it takes me like 5 passes to understand what the heck they're trying to say. But you know, it allows me to dive deeper and still do my like geekiness that Niles calls it, all while still making it fun and things that people can do. So
Yeah, and that's exactly what you're doing. It's you're taking that nerdy brain of yours that I'm just so in love with, and you're taking this complex information and your platform. Everybody should follow Caitlin. You do such a great job of simplifying it and making it fun. And these are things that every single person can do at home for free. I do them in my sauna at my gym. I've learned so much just from your fun reels on Instagram. So I know we're going to actually do some, you're going to show people how to do some things. Before that, let's just talk a little bit about lymph. Like, what is our lymph system? Just kind of lymph 101. And really, how do we know if it's not working?
such good questions. I get asked this all the time. Like, how do I know my lymph isn't working? Well, let's start with what is it?
Is it these? Is it these under my eyes?
That could be part of it. It's not always. Here's the thing. Do you know how many different things can cause similar symptoms? So it's a matter of just looking at the bigger picture, taking a step back and asking yourself a multitude of questions and really seeing, okay, what is going on? But lymphatics is really like the mirror to the circulatory system. So our blood brings nutrients to every cell in our body, and the lymphatic system takes the waste products away so that those cells aren't like bathing in toxic waste. And the problem is if that doesn't move, if that lymph doesn't take it away, our cells break down faster. We end up with drainage and detox issues. We could have, if we don't already have methylation issues, we could end up with like people, the big term right now is I have MTHFR. Should I be doing this? Well, everybody should really be doing it. And so, because our lymphatic system doesn't have a pump, we have to move it. And unfortunately, what you mentioned earlier with the chemical, emotional, physical, we're not moving our lymph very well. We sit, we wear very tight clothing. Women were in underwire bras for like 8 to 14 hours a day. We eat foods that constrict our lymph, that make it thicker and more mucousy. We're not, and I'm being bad right now, we don't wear like our blue light stuff to help with our circadian rhythm. We don't get good sleep. And that's really where our brain drains. And so our lifestyle is really hindering our body's ability to move our lymphatic system. And so my whole goal is we're not going to be able to change everything, right? Because some people are like, well, I have to wear this. I'm extremely large busted and I have to wear an underwire bra or I have to. Okay, if you have to do something, then what you got to do is when you get home, you got to do something to move the lymph, to move that stagnation so it doesn't stay stuck. So some of the most common symptoms associated with like a lymphatic issue are chronic swollen tonsils, enlarged tonsils, if you've had your tonsils removed, if you've had your adenoids removed. So if you've had those removed, you 100% have to do lymphatic drainage because you're missing part of your lymphatic system. And it really does help to filter things out, especially from the head down to the termini, which we'll talk about later. So those are some of the big ones. But when we have any fluid retention, so if you can visibly see fluid in your fingers or your ankles, when you take clothing off, if you have marks on your skin, you have lymphatic stagnation because of the clothing, or it could be you have lymphatic stagnation and the clothing is just stagnating it or congesting it even more. There can be things like bloating, digestive issues. We could have chronic fatigue. We can have brain fog. We can have allergies. We can have like the list for what lymphatic stagnation can cause is quite long, but it also overlaps with other stagnation issues like in the gut or the liver. And it's because those two organs, along with lymph and kidneys, they're all very much interconnected. And so when one's not working, we typically end up seeing problems in the other ones eventually, the longer the problem has been there. So did that answer your question or did that spur more questions?
Both. Yeah, I think that's a great answer. And then I'm just thinking about, anyone that has perhaps it's like a thyroid issue, a hormone challenge, um, some of these like site specific, quote unquote, like conditions or
Mhm.
diseases. I can't imagine that working on the lymph wouldn't help that work better, right?
100%. Whenever we have a chronic condition, there's usually one chronic inflammation. Chronic inflammation is typically at the base of, I think research has said 95% of all chronic disease processes. And so when there's chronic inflammation, it typically means there's chronic stagnation in that area at least. It doesn't have to be like systemic, but when we have inflammation, if we're not moving what is causing the inflammation, and that could be environmental, it could be lifestyle, it could be infection, it could be heavy metals, it could be stress, it could be like the list goes on, our body doesn't know the difference. And so if we leave that inflammation, which really is fluid, sitting there, it's going to break us down even further. So doing things to move your lymph, and it could be as simple as like using your hands to using a tool like gua sha or a dry brush to rebounding to like vibration plates to there's so many different ways, castor oil packs. There's a lot of different ways that we can help support lymphatic drainage and movement that doesn't take a whole lot of time and effort.
Love it. Okay. So do you want to touch on some of those? I know you just got me to get my first castor oil pack. I'm very excited about that. Why don't we start with like some of the most basic that you touched on that are the most common, like the dry brushing, the rebounding, and then I want to take it deeper to the things that you know and teach that are things that a lot of other so-called, experts in the field aren't necessarily touching on or talking
Mhm.
about.
So you can have different things like a dry brush with a handle, which makes it easier to get like the harder to reach areas. This is probably my go-to one. Reason being, I can hold it on my hand and it's just a little easier to use versus this is a little more cumbersome. There's face brushes, and all of these are made with slightly different bristles. So depending on what the goal is, you might need a different brush to help out with. So some of the things or the bristles that I use, it's either going to be boar or horse. Horse is really good for face because it's a little more soft, it's a little more gentle, it's not as abrasive. Organic bamboo is a really good one, but you don't want anything plastic. You don't want anything synthetic because our skin, when we're dry brushing, we're not only influencing lymphatic fluid, but we're also influencing circulation. Because remember, those two really go hand in hand. So when we're dry brushing and we're using something that is a little more abrasive than just our hands, we're opening up the pores. We're going to start to sweat a little bit. We're also going to draw more blood flow to the area, which will be really healing. So we want to make sure that we're using something super clean. Another option is like a jade roller. Lots of people love this. This is probably my personal least favorite way to do it,
Mm.
just because I just don't find I get the same benefits when I use it compared to if I were to use something um, like a jade gua sha tool. So I like this because I can control the pressure a little bit more. I can control the angle. And then, I'll use something like they changed the name of it. Do you know the skin colonizer? It's like my biome or whatever. That's usually my favorite
Oh, yeah.
go-to for my face. But I'll use
Okay.
castor oil on the rest of my body if I'm doing like a gua sha tool. Rebounding is fantastic because what it's doing is it's ultimately contracting the muscles, and gravity is like that difference in gravity is what is helping move the lymphatic fluid, especially from our lower extremities. So, rebounding for like 5 to working your way up to 15 minutes a day can be super fantastic. Laying on the floor with your feet up against the wall is another way that you can help. Just like don't wear tight clothing, take your socks off, just lay up there. You can do some meditation, some deep breathing, and just wiggle your feet. Deep breathing is actually a super important way to help move lymph because about 70% of the lymph we can influence via touch because it's just under our skin, but the other 30% goes really deep. So once we get the fluid, like let's say from our legs up into our groin, it goes deep. And the only way to move that deep fluid is by diaphragmatic breathing. So making sure that we're really taking that deep breath, our tummy's coming out, that we're not chest breathing, we're not like doing this. So those are some easy ways that people can utilize a couple different tools on their day to day, not to mention their hands. Like, honestly, this is probably the tool that I use most, even though I have like 10 different tools at my disposal at any time to move my lymph. I usually just go with my hands because it's easy and I can just like point focus, I guess, where I want to be. So usually I start with my hands too, because people, when I hand them a tool, they think more is better. I think more is better half the time with most things. And that can be more opposite than lymphatic stuff. So, starting light, going in the right direction, and I'm sure we're going to talk about that, is super important when it comes to lymphatics.
Awesome. Oh my gosh. So many great things. And again, follow doc.talks.detox on Instagram. It's going to be linked in the notes. All of these things she covers in her reels, exactly how to do it, everything that she's touching on. There's like a short, easy video. Okay, Caitlin, I want to go, kind of one by the things that you went through. But first, like, how often are we doing these things? Are we doing them all every single day? Do we pick one based on our symptoms? Do we pick one based on what's convenient? How do you know which lymph to do and how often?
What I typically tell people is based on you and your lifestyle. So if you've had lymph nodes like tonsils, adenoids, you've actually had lymph nodes removed due to a cancer scare or cancer or whatever it may be, you're going to have to do it every day because you're missing part of your lymphatic system. If you have a diagnosed disease like lymphedema, lipedema, you're going to have to do it every single day. If you have a very sedentary lifestyle, you sit for an hour commuting to work, you sit at work for 8 hours, you sit for an hour commuting back, then you sit in front of the couch to unwind, you're going to have to do it every day, right? So based on your personal lifestyle and what you have going on really will depict how often you do it. I have to do something every day for me, but it doesn't have to be long. Like sometimes my something is 2 minutes. Sometimes my something is 10 minutes. Sometimes my something is an hour. It really just depends. And like within the hour, I'm doing other things like castor oil and sauna and red light therapy all at once, right? Like I'm stacking my things so that I can get a whole bunch in a shorter period of time. Every day can look totally different based on your specific need. And sometimes our needs may change even based on the season. So if we have a lot more allergies in the spring or in the fall with farmers burning their crops, or if we have a really stressful time of season because we're accountants, or something's happening with our family or whatever it may be, we might need to spend maybe a little bit more time or be a little bit more frequent with how often we do it. And again, when you know how to do it and you understand the flow, you can do full body in 10 minutes and like a good full body in 10 minutes. So it doesn't have to be this long drawn out thing. We all make 4 minutes to brush our teeth every day. You technically could be doing some lymphatic drainage for 2 minutes while you're doing it using one hand, right? Like we can get creative, or we can do it while we're watching TV, or, while we're reading a book, or while we're listening to a podcast, or, make it a family thing. Like I try and get my clients to have like the families like dance it out. Like that's something that I love that you do with your kids. Dancing is actually a great way to move your lymph. So, turn on a couple songs that equal 10 minutes and have a 10-minute dance party with your family. Create memories, move your lymph. Like it could be as simple as that.
It's amazing. I love simple. So I want to go section by section. And then before that, talk to me about castor oil. Why castor oil? Mm-hmm. And I imagine there's some quality things important in the castor oil that we choose. And then sauna, as far as like, do we need to be in the sauna, or what does the sauna do to enhance our lymph when we're doing the lymph drainage?
So castor oil, I love castor oil because it has majority of the oil is what's called ricinoleic acid, which is a really fatty acid. Essentially, it's like a triglyceride. And one of the properties is that it goes deep and it reduces inflammation. So when we put castor oil on, regardless of whether we're using a pack or we're just using castor oil, like I'll use castor oil for abdominal massage when somebody's constipated, and that can really help get things going. But it reduces inflammation. So it's really good for bruising. It's really good for like last summer when I tore my bicep muscle, my whole arm was black and swollen, and I was using castor oil along with some glutathione, and it looked like brand new. It still didn't feel brand new, but it looked brand new in about 2 weeks. So it's a really great thing to have in our first aid kit just for like bumps and bruises and speeding up healing. It also helps rebalance the microbiome. So a lot of people, when they have drainage issues, the microbiome is involved, meaning we're either not pooping regularly, or it's really hard, or we're not absorbing our nutrients, which is another benefit of the castor oil, is it can increase the absorbability of our gut. So whether it's for the food we're eating, or if we're taking supplements or vitamins, it can increase the amount that we're actually taking out and absorbing from the stuff that we're taking. So I love it as a base, and I always start my one-on-one clients with castor oil and dry brushing, just because it sets up a really good foundation. Then when you throw something like a castor oil pack, especially one, I happen to have mine because I just took mine off, especially like a pack that has like the tie-on straps, what it does is it, one, allows you to be mobile. So you don't have to just be laying there for an hour, because there's very few times that I can just lay there for an hour and not move. And then two, the other way of doing it with like wrapping plastic wrap and all that around you is so toxic. If you guys get anything out of this, don't put castor oil with plastic, please. Castor oil will leach the toxins out of the plastic wrap and you'll essentially absorb them. So we don't want to do that. But the nice thing about the pack, when it's tied on, what it's doing is it's activating our dermatones. And so our dermatones are part of like our skin, which will then go innervate and go like somatosensory. So it'll go deeper and help with different functions like liver or gut or spleen or pancreas or whatever, depending on where we have it. So that's why I like the pack. Then when I throw in like castor oil with the sauna, I don't do it with the pack because the pack does have this external coating. And this isn't my personal, like, this is my pack that I use, but I don't own this pack. There is an outer like material to prevent it from being so messy. So there's an internal like organic cotton and then an external to prevent oil from getting everywhere. I don't want to heat this, just like I don't want to heat plastic. So I won't put this on and go into the sauna. I will honestly just put castor oil on and then go into the sauna. And what can happen is with heat, you can draw more of the castor oil in. So if you're wanting to do like that pack with heat, I would recommend like either go take a hot shower first, heat yourself up, and then put it on, or you can put like a heating pad over your area first and then put the castor oil on and then put the pack. But the pack will use your body temperature to heat it up, and it still is going to get deep and do all of the things that you would want to do, which is why I wear mine overnight, because then with the covers and everything, it just heats it up and I get a better outcome, better results. And I'm wearing it while I'm sleeping, which is something I have to do anyway. So
yeah, it's not interfering with life. It's like doing the, what we all love to do, two things at the same time. And then the company that you recommend getting your pack from, which I recently got one, they've got an eye mask too. And ladies, or gentlemen, castor oil is amazing for eyebrows and eyelashes. We've got all these companies are marketing these eyelash serums that I don't know if anyone's used them. They're so toxic. Like so many people end up having like bloodshot eyes from them. Castor oil works just as well.
Absolutely. And one thing that I haven't been as good with is you can literally put castor oil like over your eyelid and over your eyelashes. And people have even said it helps with floaties over time. So you can do that when you go to sleep, like the little floaters in your eyes that you see.
Yeah.
And yeah, you can wear like an eye mask over it, more like a compress, or you don't even have to do that. You can literally just put it on and go to sleep. So yeah, it's fantastic.
Can we put castor oil on kids? So when you're talking about like belly discomfort, is castor oil okay for them?
Yeah, absolutely. What I would do though with kids is I wouldn't leave it, like I wouldn't tie it on them without supervision until they're old enough to understand. And I wouldn't really have kids wear it, at night until they're older and can actually understand what needs to happen and make sure like at that point, because they do make kids packs, but what I would do is I would cut the strings so that they're not quite as long and they're only as long as you need it for the kiddos. And then babies, you can use castor oil on babies. I just wouldn't use the pack. I would just put castor oil if the baby's constipated and rub that into the abdomen that way. But yeah, you absolutely can use it.
You could leave it on the babies. You wouldn't have to rub it off, not the pack, but just rubbing the castor oil
Yeah.
in and let it any excess get absorbed.
Yeah, and you can do that like on like adults too. I was going to say humans. You can do that with adults or kids. You can just rub it in and go about your day. So, like sometimes in the summer when I'm working outside, I'll be in like a sports bra and shorts, and it'll be hot, and so I'll just rub castor oil, like let's say on my abdomen, go outside, do what I'm going to do, and then I'm going to get dirty likely because I'm doing something in the garden or whatever, and then I'll jump in the shower, wash it off after a couple hours. But I just let it absorb in the heat of the sun, and I just go about it that way. But just note that castor oil will stain. So don't say I didn't warn you. I personally have a castor oil outfit that I wear my pajamas when I go to bed. And I don't care that my sheets get stained, just because the benefits that I get from it, it doesn't bother me. But if you're worried about your sheets and that, know that castor oil can stain your sheets or your clothes.
Could people lay down a towel? Would that be enough if you care about
Yeah.
your sheets?
Yeah. The only thing that, you want to do is you just want to make sure that you're using like an organic towel. Ideally, you could do like organic cotton, unbleached would be ideal, because then you're not going to absorb anything from that towel from the like castor oil and bringing it in. But that's me just being super picky. But yeah, you absolutely can.
Okay, great. Caitlin, I would love to go kind of region by region. Is that cool with you? Like, why would we do the face? How do we do the face? Opening the termini, maybe the importance of like, do we go towards the heart, away from the heart?
Yeah, why don't we start with like the basics for lymphatic drainage that I find most people aren't talking about, or they're talking about it improperly. So the first thing that we have to know is, regardless of where we're working, whether it's our head, whether it's our feet, whether it's our fingers, whether it's our breast, we always have to start and end at the termini. And most people are catching on, but they're not opening it up in the right area. So a lot of people, like, I'm going to do this to accentuate it, they're rubbing right here. And that is not where the termini is. So what they're doing is they're going too far in. They're going right next to that like sternal notch. What we want to do is we actually want to go in the deeper parts. So ultimately, like if you were to do this and you had this big divot, and don't worry, I'll show you guys what to do without doing this, because not everybody can do this. What it is it's literally right in like the deepest part there. So that's where I put my fingers. Now, the other way to find it is you can go earlobes down, and it's going to get you the same area. So if you're looking in a mirror and you look at your earlobes and you just draw a line straight down, it'll take you into that deeper part, not over here. The other way that you can do it is like you can put your hands behind you. And this is another way that you can do it. This is probably my least favorite. This is how I teach kids how to do it because it's easier. But this is probably not a way that I would show like an adult or a teenager how to do it. So what we want to do is we want to use our ring finger and our middle finger because we can use the least amount of pressure. Thumbs we don't want to do because we just dig, and remember, lymph is super light. So ultimately what we do is when we find that spot, you're just going to either rub in circles or you can do gentle pumps. And by gentle, I mean like we're not digging. We're not doing that. It's super gentle. And the reason that is this is where all of our lymphatic fluid drains. So if we're congested here, and actually one of my favorite analogies was by Kelly, who said like, it's like a toll booth, right? If this is our toll booth and the toll booth is backed up, you can't move the car at the back of the line, meaning you can't move the lymphatic fluid from your toes if we're congested at the toll booth. So if we're congested here, nothing's going to move until this is free and clear. So usually we start here and then we move away. So what we don't want to do, and this is what I see people teaching all the time, is oh, you can have a dry brush, and it's usually with dry brushes, and we're going to start at our fingers and move towards the heart. Well, the same theory or same analogy applies. Like if we have congestion down here at our fingers and it needs to drain here, why do we think that we can pull this fluid all the way up for it to drain when there's going to be other fluid preventing this from draining? So we got to
Right.
start closest to the termini and then work our way down to the problematic area. So we're never starting at the problem. We're working our way towards the problem, but always pulling towards the termini or towards the heart, because this is where it drains. So same thing would be like with the feet. If we're going to do the feet, we're going to start at the abdomen, our groin, and then we're going to work our way up while pulling it up until we get to our feet. And then we'll pull all of it up so that it can drain. But that's where we have to start to implement some like diaphragmatic breathing and things like that too. So the whole purpose or the whole like concept that people have to understand is the direction. So we're always moving towards the termini. The termini is the first and last thing that we do. So after you're done, you go back and you just massage, rub, gently pump the termini to make sure that it has proper drainage. And then the pressure. Most people I see when they're doing it, they're like pushing real hard. Can't do that. This isn't a massage. We're not trying to influence the muscles. We're trying to influence the lymphatic system that lays just under the skin above the muscles. So we want it to be very gentle, like it's like gliding. We're not pushing, we're gliding. And so those are probably the three biggest mistakes that people do when they're trying to implement a lymphatic drainage practice. And then the order in which they do it, right? So like, where do you go after you open this up? Well, it kind of depends on what you're trying to target. What is your goal? What do you have going on? And there's a bunch of different ways. The problem is when somebody's had, say, a surgery, whether it's like a C-section or gallbladder removed, or they've had lymph nodes removed, or a mastectomy, or whatever it may be, we may have to do things slightly differently because part of your lymphatic system has been removed. So we may have to move fluid over to the other side of the body for it to drain. We may have to use more pressure. We may have to pull it down instead of up. Like there's all these little nuances that what we end up playing with once the person has the concept of, pressure, order, termini, that type of thing. So it's easy once you understand like the generality from it. But the big thing, honestly, if you guys start doing termini, start closest to the termini, work away, always pull towards, and go real gentle, you're going to see better results than pretty much anybody else that is doing it at this time. So those are the big things that I would definitely start with.
Are people typically sore at the termini? Like, I'm really tight here. I mean, I know it's where like our scalenes and all those, accessory muscles here come together. But is that an indication at all of stuck lymph, or is that just coincidental?
So it can, it's not always, right? Because there could be other things like scalenes. But here's the thing, our scalenes, our platysma muscle, our SCM, when those are really tight, what it's going to do is it's going to restrict our lymph from draining. So doing things like stretching and fascial work and like rolling and things like that might be necessary in order to get things to drain. If people have a ton of like puffiness, because I have people who are like, oh, I'm so puffy in there. I'm not like you. Well, guess what, honey? I wasn't always nice and divoted. I did have puff because there was just a lot of fluid that was stagnant. And what can happen is one of two things. Either the fluid's been sitting there for a while. And so just by moving it, right? Just like if you were to sprain your finger, right? And you were trying to massage the fluid down, your finger's going to be a little bit more sore getting that fluid moving. It doesn't mean it's a bad thing. It just means your body's communicating with you. Or it could mean that you're pushing too hard. So backing it off even more and just being super, super gentle, like literally just like rubbing think of like rubbing a baby's head, right? We're so gentle with babies' heads. That's kind of what we want to do. Or if you cover your eye, the amount of pressure you would put on your eye is really the amount of pressure that you would use when doing lymphatic stuff. No more. Absolutely no more. So those would be the two things that I typically see when someone's like, oh, that's really, really sore in there. either back off the pressure, or you're going to have to do some other things too, like stretching. Hydration is a big thing. People who are super, super sore there tend to be dehydrated. So, just a couple things that I've seen over the years.
Okay, so upper body here, I guess it'd be same
Mhm.
for lower body. How long do we pump the termini for? I know you said before and after. And
Yeah.
then theoretically, about how long would we be draining, say, like the upper limb?
Sure. So anywhere between the bare minimum that I say when we're pumping the termini is 10. Usually, let's be honest, because of the life that we all live, like me too, I do it about 30 times. At the end, I might only do it 15 times because I've already gotten everything moving. And it's really just to make sure that, it's all flowing and draining. When it comes to like upper body, lower body, when you really know what you're doing in the order, you can typically get like the head done in about 2 minutes. You can do an arm in about a minute and a half each side. The abdomen is about 2 minutes, and then each leg is about 2 minutes just because of how big it is. So give or take. So that's roughly what you're looking at. And then if we throw things in like breast and back and things like that, it's just going to increase it. But the better and more comfortable you are with it, what'll happen is it's going to take time off. So, like I said, I can pretty much do a full body, like I'm talking face, neck, back, breast, everything, lymphatic drainage in about 10 minutes. Now, it wasn't always like that. It used to take me 15, 20 minutes because I'd have to be like, okay, what am I doing? And be real intentional and be like, oh, I'm pushing too hard. Or, like, oh, I got to open up the lymph nodes here because I have more swelling. Or it's just a little dependent upon what you have going on. But give or take, that's a good estimation as to the amount of time.
Great. And then you touched a little bit about, underwire bras. And ladies, please, please get rid of your underwire. Please, please, please. So not great for us in so many levels. And what would we do, Caitlin? What are the directions of flow, especially for someone who wears underwire bras?
That is a really complicated answer to what seems to be a simple question, right? So, the first thing you have to do, honestly, is you got to take that bra off. So, if you have to wear it, you got to take it off, just like you have to take off tight clothing. Don't get me wrong, guys. You will see me in yoga wear.
Lululemon all the
You will
way.
see me in those. But I make sure that if I have any marks when I take it off, that I am going to be moving the lymph. So, honestly, some simple things to do is when we take it off, like laying on our backs with our feet up just to help pull things out. Doing deep breathing is really important. And then ultimately, our breath drains into our armpit. So, without being able to like show all of the directions and everything, because this really is a little bit more complicated depending, because you're really supposed to like divvy up your breast into different quadrants. But the whole thing is it's all going to drain up here, which is why so many women that have breast cancer end up having lymph nodes removed in here as well. And so, it's all draining here, which the nice thing about it too is doing things like lymphatic drainage and castor oil can help with like fibrocystic breasts, so dense breasts. It can help reduce the fibrosity. So if you have cysts in your breasts, it's even helped women with like uterine fibroids and things like that, PCOS, reducing inflammation. So, doing things like lymphatic drainage, because lymph will also help balance hormones because lymph pulls and moves progesterone. And so if our progesterone is not freely floating, we can end up with estrogen dominance, which can then cause all of those unwanted symptoms like heavy periods and menstrual cramps and mood swings and dense breasts and PCOS and, like the list goes on and on. So one of the first things that I have people do, again, is castor oil packs with lymphatic drainage just to get everything moving and flowing. And if you have any of those things, you can even put the pack over top of your breast. And you can wear the castor oil pack. It doesn't just have to be over your liver. It can be anywhere that you're having stagnation issues. So that's one of the things that I love about it. It's like easy to use and we can put it anywhere because it's so versatile.
Awesome. Oh my gosh. So many incredible resources. Again, Follow the Instagram. So much great stuff on there. Okay, let's finish up, Caitlin, with the face. I think the face is such a great spot. So many things going
Mhm.
on there that we can drain.
Tons of things. So, what we have to remember whenever we're doing drainage, there's a lot of people out there who are showing drainage, but they're going in the wrong direction. So, you have to understand where things drain in order to get it to drain. So, somebody who has like puffiness, they have really round puffy faces, they have really puffy like under the eyes or eyelids, they have a lot of dental issues. We have so many lymphatic vessels in through here, which is why when I had my cavitation surgery, it literally blew up on my skin. So the big thing is we're always draining down here. So everywhere else is draining up. Our head and neck is draining down. So we're always moving towards the termini. And what you got to know is we always start in the middle and drain out. So everything in our face essentially drains to our ears, which drain into our tonsillar nodes, which if you don't have tonsils, it's still going to drain in that area. We still typically have cells like tonsillar cells. They don't typically get everything. So we're still doing it whether you have it or not, and down. So ultimately the big thing is we always start closest to the termini. So we're not going to start at the top of our head. We'll start like at our neck, then we'll start at our chin, then we'll move to our cheekbone, and then we'll move to like the top of our skull, like our forehead and things like that. But everything is moving out and then down. So ultimately, you can pretty much do by any which order. I mean, like you can do your head last, you can do your arms first, you can play it up that way, but we're always moving closest to the termini away, but always pulling towards. And it's in to out to down when it comes to the face and neck.
Okay. And then, like you said, your favorite tool, I do love the gua sha for a face. I think it just
Mm-hmm.
looks and feels so efficient. The roller feels nice, especially if it's I keep mine in the freezer and then Kaya loves to do it. It just feels good, but I can tell the gua sha does more. Yeah, they feel good.
Yeah, it
I don't know
does.
how much they're doing.
It feels, I don't know. It honestly, I think part of it too, mine's older, so it squeaks now, and that squeaking drives me bonkers. So I don't use it as much. But my favorite, honestly, is my little like facial dry brush. I love this one. I feel like I get a whole lot out of it. It's honestly one of my favorites. Now, I've had this one forever and the company doesn't make them anymore. I'm still looking for a clean source because anytime that you use anything, you want to make sure that it's sourced cleanly. Like, you don't want the bristles to have a whole bunch of toxins like we talked about before, because what concerns me is that when we dry brush, we're opening up the pores, which when we open up pores, we're more easily absorbing what is touching it. So the last thing that I want to do is like the goal of moving lymph is to like move waste products, but then we're using something that's adding toxins and getting absorbed into the body is so counterintuitive to me. Just like people when they're like, oh, just put castor or plastic wrapper under castor oil packs. I'm like, it's counterintuitive. Like we're trying to drain and detox, yet we're adding toxins to our body that we're going to have to drain and detox more. Like it just doesn't sit with me. But so your favorite is the gua sha?
Well, no, gua sha. I was going to say hands. I want to know more about using our hands as tools. And as chiropractors first, I know we both do all these things, but as chiropractors first and foremost, I think that was one of my many big attractions to being a chiropractor. I have all that I need to do my job as I am. So how do we drain our lymph with just our hands?
The same thing. You're literally just moving in and out. So everything that I teach with a tool, whether it's a dry brush, a roller, a gua sha, you have to start with learning your hands, because usually what I find is as soon as I give somebody a tool to use, they dig and they go so much harder that it becomes ineffective. And so by learning with your hands and learning the proper pressure, you're actually going to make your tool usage more effective when you add them in. So I never, like, even in my membership, I have women who are like, okay, I want to start with this. And I'm like, great. And we have to start here, because if you don't understand, the direction and the pressure using your hands, the moment we add a tool, the pressure increases. So they have to know what it feels like first so that they know, okay, that's too much. I have to back off. I always, always, always start teaching with hands. And the other thing is, I travel, you travel all the time. I can only travel with so many things. Don't get me wrong. I still travel with some of my like little gadgets, but I always have my hands with me. So regardless of where I'm at a conference, at like a teaching event, at visiting family in a different country, whatever it may be, I always have my hands with me, which means I can always do this. So I don't
Mhm.
have to have these extra things. Whereas, if I solely rely on a dry brush or gua sha, I always have to have it with me. And if I don't, then I go, well, I can't do it. So guess it's not happening today.
Yeah, it makes it so easy. Well, obviously people, you guys have listened to Caitlin. This is totally your niche. You are in your lane. This is exactly where you're
Mhm.
supposed to be. Thank you so much for sharing all these tools. Your Instagram page is incredible. Again, if you haven't already, say, go follow her. The reels are so easy and informative. And then I just want to touch briefly on your membership for anyone who wants to take it a step further.
Yeah, so with Instagram, I teach as much as I can, right, in 15-second, 30-second clips. And I have everything out there. You have to literally go through my page and piece it together. I'm not hiding things. It's all on there, but you have to take the time and put it together. You might have to go back a couple months. But in the membership, I literally have it laid out for people step by step, where to start: full lymphatic, like facial drainage, full lymphatic, breast, abdomen, scar tissues, because scar tissue actually will hinder lymphatic drainage. So, how do we break up scar tissue? I just taught that live last month. This month, which will be next month or the past month for you guys when you hear this, is like abdominal massage. So, making sure that we're pooping. How do we do that to support lymphatic drainage? So, everything surrounding drainage, but it's ultimately laid out for you to make it easy. And I think part of the thing that people love the most is I do a live Q&A where you come on and you ask me any drainage question, and myself and my husband, Dr. Niles, we sit there and we just answer every question, whether it's, what do I do if I have lymph nodes removed here? Like, what's the order that I can do it in if they're a little confused? Or my grandson has this going on, how can I help him? Or, you know what I mean? So it's
Mhm.
super fun and interactive. And it's just for those individuals who are like, I want to know how to do this, and I want you to have it laid out for me. So that's really where all that is. And then you get additional teachings, trainings every single month based on questions from the community, like what they want to learn. And it builds, and it's been so much fun. So much fun.
Awesome. And where can people find information on your membership?
Yeah. So the best way would honestly be to email yourhealthrevived@gmail.com. And then my team can email them back. That's probably the easiest way. Don't DM me on Instagram. I have like 500 DMs, and it takes me a long time to get through them all, because one of the things that I still want to do is answer the questions. I don't want to just have some team member answering them for me just yet. So it takes me a hot minute. So if you DM me, just know that it'll probably be a week or 2 weeks before you get responded to.
Thank you. Thank you, Caitlin. I'll make sure all your resources are plugged below. Again, lastly, I'm just so proud of you. I've loved watching this path for you, and I'm so proud of you for clearing out some of your own stuff, because I know that's just a big piece of what's landed you here where you are, serving so many people.
We all have our own stuff, and it's just a matter of figuring out what we need to clear it, right? And so this was a big part for me. And if you feel that it's a big part for you guys, I'd love to have you follow me on Instagram or join the membership and learn how you can not only support you, but your family, and make it like a fun family thing. And I love what you're doing, Melissa, like really stepping into the mama part of being an entrepreneur and a mom and a doctor and a successful like married life. And it's hard to balance all those things, and there's no such thing as perfection, but I really do, what I've seen is you're doing a great job of implementing like balance and what you need to do in order to take care of you, which is so amazing to see. So hopefully, if we ever have kids, I can be like, okay, what did you do here? Because this is crazy. And you're doing it gracefully and beautifully. So good job.
Thank you. I know we all just lean on and support one another and learn so much from each other. And I hope this inspires people also to find their community, because it's so important now. We're all going through challenges all the time, and it's so precious to have relationships that you can open up and talk about all the things, the good things, the struggles, all of it.
Absolutely.
All right. Love you, sister. I'll see you soon.
Love you too. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. I hope you enjoyed that episode. You now have so many tools that you can use today to help drain your lymph for free. If you enjoyed this episode, go ahead and throw a like under it. I would love to hear your comments. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. And as always, go ahead and share this episode with someone in your life who you know can benefit from this information. Thank you.